Thanks very much, Rick. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started because we do have quite a bit to cover and we have an hour. I don't want to go over that because I want to respect your time and make sure you're out in the field doing what you need to do. But I do want to cover a little bit of an agenda just to give you an overview of what we're talking about. We did talk already about the dealer support tools. I'm going to cover the brand overview here in just a moment, really quickly for you. We do have some firmware updates that were launched, and I'll talk more about those and the features that were added. And these are to all the existing products, including the RXA 80 series, which came out in 2018. We're just continuing to add firmware updates to those to add more features instead of coming out with a new line of receivers in the 2019 model year. The next AV receivers that we launch will be in the 2020 year. So obviously not that far away anymore, but just to make sure you guys know that the receivers that are out are the ones that you've been selling for a little while, and they just get more and more features added to them at no cost to you or the end user. So we are going to talk about the higher end Aventage receivers, the RXA 1080 and above, including the CXA preamp and the MXA 5200 amplifier. We're going to cover just a little bit about MusicCast and how it interacts with these receivers. You don't have to use MusicCast, it's built in, it's available for you, but because it has MusicCast, it has a lot of these really great features that you can utilize with these installs that you're doing. So just to be aware of that, and using the MusicCast protocol, you can use third-party control systems and get all of the IP control feedback that you're used to with these systems because we're certified by pretty much everybody in the industry. And we're going to talk a little bit about using advanced AVR features, especially on the higher models, to save some time. I want to make sure you're aware of these and you can customize these units that you're putting in for your customers to a level that they would not be able to do if they just purchased it off the shelf and tried to put it in themselves. The whole point of having you there is for the convenience of the install, but also for the attention to detail that you'll put in and make it right. So that's what I want to show you guys towards the end. And then at the very end, we'll have time for some Q&A session. So make sure you stick around for that. Make sure it updates. Good, it does. So just in case you guys didn't know already, Yamaha is the world's largest music instrument manufacturer. We are 1 in 4 music instruments sold every year worldwide. So if you purchased any musical instrument last year or the year before that, whatever it is, anywhere in the world, you have a 1 in 4 chance of it being a Yamaha branded instrument, which is a huge thing to say. Keep that in mind when you're speccing in these jobs, because customers don't always know the names of everything that you're installing into their house, but they will know the Yamaha name for one reason or another, and they know that it's a quality product. The other thing I want to talk about is that we are big into music education. We have 7 million students worldwide, and that number grows every year. We're opening up music schools more and more each year all around the US and the world. So you'll be able to see those. And the big thing is that we want to make sure that people grow up and have a love of music, whether it's playing music, composing music, producing music, whatever the case may be. So we want to make sure music is a big part of their lives for as long as they live. Next thing I want to show you guys is that Yamaha is the industry leader in live sound. We have a lot of very, very prestigious concert halls all around the world and in the US as well. One of our biggest ones on the more recent side was Carnegie Hall. Everything in there on the audio side in the stage is all Yamaha products. So that was a big feat for us to be able to do that, and we're real proud of that and a lot of other venues that we have around the US. The also leader in innovation. We have a ton of engineering staff in the US and in Japan. Their main reason for existing here is to make sure that we innovate and we have the best capability, inside the product and outside. So I want to make sure that follows on and make sure you guys understand that, because when you're selling a Yamaha product, you're selling something that's taken a lot of time and effort to produce, and we don't take that responsibility lightly. We want to make sure that you have everything you need to make it work for you. On our dealer website that we talked about a little bit ago, you do have access to these one sheet or tech stories, as we call them. These are just a single sheet PDF that's available for you guys that just kind of give you an overview of a recent firmware update and what it does and why it's important to you guys. Not everybody knows what actions on Google means, or the Qobuz capabilities, Amazon Music, things like that. So when they get added, to there, we always create one of these little sheets and post it on the dealer site so that you guys can do a quick read of what's important about it. So covering over the new product capabilities in 2019, again, so we did not come out with any new AV receivers in the 2019 model year. They've actually still been around since 2018. There's nothing wrong with them. They work perfectly fine. They're not lacking in any way. What we've been able to do is take advantage of a kind of a break in the industry where there was nothing major hardware-wise coming out for 2019, and we're able just to put that into engineering resources to make the existing products a little bit better. So we've been able to add some cool capabilities, and again, these were free firmware updates. The most recent one happened late October, so we're still producing them throughout this year, and they add a lot of cool features. So we'll go over that just right now. The biggest one is AirPlay 2. All of our 2018 MusicCast products, and including the AV receivers, are all AirPlay 2 certified. So if it has networking and it's a 2018 model product, it has AirPlay 2 already there. One of the big things you'll notice is that it's an AirPlay 2 device will have that little checkbox on the right-hand side next to the room name. And AirPlay 2 allows you to link more than one room together at a time. Works really, really well. This is a very, very positive feature for us. We're really happy to get it, and we're really excited about it. The nice part is too, is it doesn't actually matter what brand it is. So you can link together a living room speaker that's MusicCast with another device that's AirPlay 2 certified in another room. So just because it's inside of the house and it's AirPlay 2 certified means that you can now link those two items together, and everything will play in sync, and it will sound really cool. Because we are AirPlay 2 certified, we actually have some Siri functionality. So inside of the Apple Home app, you can add the devices in and you can control them with some basic functions inside of Siri. So you can use your Apple Watch, your iPhone, whatever the case is, to call up Siri and do some basic control of that, which is really kind of cool. We're also Google certified. So this is works with Google Assistant. There's a lot of different names for it, but basically we have very similar functions that we've had with Alexa for a little while. We have them on the Google platform as well. So you can do voice control within the MusicCast world because of that. The other thing that we're supporting, and we're adding more and more of these all the time, is Josh AI. Josh is a smaller voice control system, but they are CEDIA channel based, meaning they're for you guys. This is not a consumer level item. You can purchase Josh as a dealer, put it into a customer's house, and program everything, and it works really, really well with all of these MusicCast capable AVRs. So just something to be aware of. We're trying to highlight as many of these things as we can that we support to make sure when you guys get out to a job site, whatever it is you want to do with these products, we would like you to be able to do that. And part of that is just supporting as many of these services as possible. And Josh is an excellent voice control capability. So going back to just a recap, we do have AirPlay, which means we have Siri control, we have Google, Alexa, and then obviously Josh. So the other thing that we did this year is we added support for Spotify free accounts. So all the 2018 models now can utilize a non-paid Spotify account. So customers that don't wish to pay for Spotify, they can still stream from their phone and then do the Spotify Connect over to any of the 2018 MusicCast pieces, including the AV receivers that we're going to come over today. And another service we added was Qobuz. This is a big, big, big focus on high-res audio, which is a big focus of what Yamaha does in general. So we want to make sure that not just CD quality tracks, but actually high-res tracks can be streamed from Qobuz. They have the largest collection of those high-res tracks in the world, so quite a bit inside of their catalog. So plenty of CD quality tracks, but also higher res than that as well. And then finally, the most recent thing that we did was the firmware update in October for all the 2018 models added Amazon Music and an enhanced Alexa skill. So previously with Alexa, you had to say, Alexa, ask MusicCast to play favorite one in the kitchen. Now it's a lot easier to do that. This is really where it kind of kicks into high gear. We support deep linking with those music services, so you can actually, you don't have to call out the music service. It's set up as a default in the Alexa app. You can actually just say, Alexa, play Pantera in the living room, and it will go to the living room, pull out Pantera from Pandora or whatever other music services that you'd like it to go through. Tidal is another one. I know they have quite a bit, and it will actually play through that. You can also pull in a specific song. You can pull in a genre. So you can actually go through quite a bit in the new Alexa skill. And that's available already right now. You just have to make sure you're on the current firmware, and you should be all good. So rounding out all of our receivers, and again, all of our MusicCast devices as well, do support quite a bit of streaming services for all walks of life, including the SiriusXM Music for Business you see there on the right-hand side. So if you're a business or putting this inside of a commercial environment, you can actually program it to run SiriusXM Music for Business and have all the fees properly paid, the ASCAP fees and things like that for the song, so you can stream it inside of a public environment. So it works really well with that. And we're always looking to add more things as well. So just because we have the items that are already there doesn't mean we're stopping and we're done. We're always going to look to add more and more things as possible. So keep that in mind. And the last thing we did add via the firmware update was EARC, or Enhanced ARC. This is for the 2017 and 2018 AVRs, all now have that. So what it does is it does everything that the regular audio return channel does. In addition, it also supports a high-res multi-channel audio. So you get the full bandwidth of HDMI audio, including DTS HD Master Audio and Dolby True HD. So you can do DTS:X and Dolby Atmos as well, all from whatever streaming services they have in the TV, or if you want to connect your Blu-ray player or something into the TV, it will backfeed that high-res audio over to the receiver via HDMI. Really quick, I want to cover the MusicCast integration. And when I say MusicCast integration, by the way, guys, I do mean all MusicCast products. So it doesn't matter if it's a small soundbar, wireless speaker, or an AV receiver. If it supports MusicCast, it will support these integration protocols. So right now, you can go out, and if you're a Control4 dealer, which I know Snap is now owns Control4, it works really well within all of our MusicCast products. They get certified individually. Alon has a great integration as well. We do support Fibro, which does some controls and little sensors and things like that. We also have a really good control with RTI and URC TC 2.0. And we've got a lot of them in development as well, in addition to the voice control. So just kind of moving on there. And make sure when I say MusicCast support and AV receiver support, I mean that you can take any of those control systems, let's just say Control4, for example, and I can take one AV receiver and control it through IP using that protocol. It's there, it's certified, and everything's good to go. So even if you're not utilizing MusicCast as a whole house entertainment system, you can still utilize the MusicCast driver for Control4 or for RTI. All you have to do is just add that one room control. But any of our MusicCast devices do have full two-way IP control through those systems. So you want to control a soundbar, you want to control a wireless speaker through IP, you can do that within the MusicCast world. So let's talk a little bit about the Aventage products in general. Now, there's some things that they share as a whole lineup, and then there's some things that are unique to the higher level Aventage products, like the RX-A 1080 and above that we're going to talk about today. But I want to just give you guys a brief history of the Aventage line. When we came out with these products going on 9 years ago, it was something that was totally different for us. We actually took 2 years off and we redesigned the entire products around the best sound quality, the best video quality, the best control capabilities, and we redesigned everything for the end user and for the CI installer for you guys. So keep that in mind when you're looking at these systems. They really were designed for you guys and to give you guys the most features and the best quality possible. So if you look at the bottom of any of the Aventage receivers, you'll notice that iconic fifth foot on there. It really does help out with the vibration. It helps out when the transformer on the RX-A 1080, for example, is center mounted. So it helps out reduce a lot of the stress and weight that it would cause inside of the center of that unit. It also reduces vibrations and helps out as well with the sound quality. they all have a 3-year warranty. They all have aluminum front panels and things like that. So you're going to find a lot of really cool features on here. Now, the warranty is parts and labor. We don't try to, mimic something where it's a 90 days, parts and then you pay labor or something. It's covered both parts and labor. And the RX V series products have a 2-year parts and labor warranty. So if you have a customer who's worried about warranty length or period, stepping them up to an Aventage model will give them that 3-year warranty. The Aventage system was designed around the best quality parts, even if it's a third-party part that we have to put into the system. So you're going to find a lot of heavily customized things that are inside. For example, the power supply is not necessarily an off-the-shelf unit. We take an off-the-shelf part and we actually add and tweak designs to it to make it our own and to make it work as good as possible inside of our system. So every part inside of there was designed for the best sound quality and the best video quality that you're going to be available. And we got to come to this slide here. I like to show this slide because the answer is yes. Any of the current technologies that are out on the market for video will pass through the Yamaha receiver out of the box. You don't have to do any settings. There should be no problems with the receiver being a weak link in the chain, whether it's 4K 60, HDR, Dolby Vision. The answer is yes. All the inputs, all the outputs, they all support all of the capabilities that you're going to find today. Uh, One of the things I mentioned earlier was that we didn't need to come out with a new set of products for 2019 because the 2018 models did everything that we needed them to do. Uh, when it comes to things like 8K, you're probably going to find that in a next generation. Nobody has that yet for the switching capabilities. Those chips are usually about a year behind when the TVs get them. So you're going to find that probably in the 2020 models is the ability to do 8K of some sort. But for right now, anything that's out on the market that can be passed through, we support it with that on all the Yamaha receivers, including the ones I'm going to sell you on today, which is the 1080 and higher. There is a little web control sheet that I'm going to show you. There are actually 2 capabilities of the AV receiver when it comes to the web control. You can just type in the IP address if you'd like to, or if you type in the IP address /setup, you'll be able to get a clean interface where you can actually set most of the settings and features of that AV receiver. So just type in the IP address /setup for that web page that you'll be able to do. And keep in mind, excuse me, keep in mind that if you're selling an Oversee product or some other remote management product, Oversee Pro, Domos, anything like that, we do support web control through there as well. So you'll be able to connect to the AV receiver through the secure tunnel, and then if you just add /setup with a capital S, you'll be able to access this remotely. So just keep that in mind when you're selling things like Oversee. Yamaha supports that really, really well, and you'll be able to access a ton of information, including this web setup page through the access of your own home office or phone if you wanted to. The RXA 1080 and above did have a redesign. They have a new remote control and they have a new GUI interface as well, the graphic interface for setting up everything. It's a very nice interface. It is a little bit of a change from the older 2017 models, but once you spend a few minutes and get accustomed to it, which I'm sure you guys all are by now, you will be able to access and run through everything very quickly. It's a very nice looking user interface. I think they did a really good job on it. So you'll find both of those in there as well. Same thing with the remote. It's a redesigned remote control for 2018, and it has a lot cleaner of an interface. We took out a lot of buttons. We tried to make it as streamlined as possible. So jumping right into the RXA 1080 here, I want to make sure we cover everything for you guys today and get you going in a good fashion. The 1080 is the first Aventage receiver in the lineup that supports a really cool feature called Surround AI. This is the first artificial intelligence built into an AV receiver. And what it does is I'll talk a little bit more about it later with some slides, but it actually looks at the incoming audio signal, analyzes it to see what kind of scene it's currently playing, and then applies the proper amount of DSP and the proper type of DSP for that particular scene. So the easiest way is to tell you what you're not going to get. What you're not going to get is an overblown, overdone DSP mode that doesn't sound natural. Everything that runs through the surround AI is for the proper scene and sounds really good. So you're not going to get a lot of weird echo or reverb in the rear speakers or anything that just doesn't sound like it shouldn't be there. So it works really, really well. And again, it's in the RXA 1080 and higher. You'll also get the ability for it to process the Cinema DSP HD Cubic DSP modes basically for Dolby Atmos and DTSX. And what this really means for you guys is that if a customer does put it in a DSP mode like say Adventure or something like that, you'll be able to still process Dolby Atmos on top of getting the DSP mode effect. So you're not going to lose anything if you're utilizing those DSP modes. It's not going to stop processing Dolby Atmos, because it has enough power in the DSP chips to do both at the same time. Easy stuff. It's HDCP 2.2 compliant. That goes with the 4K, 444, 4K 60, and HDR and all that. It does have a dedicated output for Zone 2, and I'll talk more about that in a second when I show you the back panel. The symmetrical amplifier layout, I want to show you guys a picture of that. And of course, it has some new DACs and functionality like that. So that's a good, well-rounded AV receiver. This is really where the Aventage features and capabilities kick into high gear. So the RXA 1080 is really where you want to start your customers who are looking for asking about specific DACs, or they're mentioning audio quality or room layout or speaker layout or anything like that that would give you guys that kind of limitation and problem. So one thing to be aware of on here is start the RXA 1080 with customers that mention that and that are aware of audio quality. It does have better DACs, it does have better processing and capabilities there. So let's jump into Surround AI real quick. Again, this is the first artificial intelligent DSP mode that you're going to find inside of an AV receiver. It analyzes the incoming audio signal and actually analyzes it 5 times a second. And it's looking for what type of scene it currently is, and then it will optimize the DSP output in real time. So you're not going to get any delay or any problems like that, but it does actually analyze it as things change. So if we jump over to the remote control, you can turn this on and off with the remote. It actually does have discrete commands as well. Those are available through IR, through the IP codes and stuff like that. But it is on by default for those HDMI inputs. So just keep that in mind. What happens with Surround AI is that it's looking at the incoming audio signal for what type it is, how many channels it is, what type of scene. It's trying to see and evaluate so it can apply the right DSP mode. So when you're looking through here, if it's a dialogue scene and it's just center channel, the incoming audio signal is not going to change drastically. What it's going to do is sense that it's a dialogue scene, and it will try to boost the dialogue levels to make sure that you can actually hear it. This is great for a customer that complains that they always have to keep their finger on the remote control volume to raise it up and down depending on what scene it is. So if they can really, really hear the explosions and crashes of the movie and they cannot hear the dialogue, Surround AI will try to help them with that. It tries to boost those dialogue levels and actually give them a clear, intelligible dialogue level without having to change things a lot. And if the audio signal changes, if it goes from dialogue to, let's just say, give me a second here. I don't know why it did that. It just jumped over to, okay, we're back. If it jumps over from dialogue to something where it takes the front, left, and right channels in addition to it. So what'll happen is once it senses that, you'll be able to utilize that and see the incoming signal, and it'll change Surround AI accordingly. So keep that in mind when it's going through. It's doing this all by itself. You don't have to do anything. But if you notice in this picture, it's not utilizing the rear speakers because it's not necessary. It's only utilizing the sound channels and enhancing those channels of where audio is actually coming out in the natural channels. And it can do this over top of Dolby Atmos and DTSX as well. We demoed this over at CEDIA, and it was a really, really powerful surround sound demo that we did. So. And again, if things change, if it goes to an ambient scene and jumps over to some surround effects, so you have cars driving by or wind going off or something like that, where, say things are coming out of multiple channels, it's going to utilize all of the channels that are available and then give that proper effect to it, but it's not going to overdo it. So again, it's going to sound really, really well done. Uh, and in fact, a lot of times you won't even be able to tell that there's any enhancement done at all because it's so minimal at some times. And then when we go to a full high intense scene, explosions, gunfights, any kind of car chases, anything where there's just sound coming everywhere, the surround AI will pick that up and utilize that as well. So again, any number of channels surrounding you, it will utilize those, including overheads. So that's surround AI, and again, it's on the 1080 and higher. So it gives you an idea of the processing level when it comes to surround AI. We have to, add additional processing chips and things like that in there just to give it those capabilities. So what we see here is a top-down view of the cover off of an RX-8 1080. And what you'll notice here is the symmetrical design, symmetrical layout of the system. So the capacitors and the power supply there are in the middle of the unit. All the left channel amps are on the left side, or all the right channel amps are on the right side. We try to push the HDMI and networking and processing boards as far away from everything as possible. So they're always in the very back, as high up as they can. So they ends up creating as little interference and as little noise in the system as possible. Here's that dedicated HDMI out for zone 2. It's on the right-hand side. Now you notice that it still has dual HDMI outs on the left as well. Those are for the main room, usually for a secondary common TV. So if you have a projector screen and a TV together, or if you have a common area television like a kitchen or something like that, you can connect it to the second HDMI out on the left, and then you still have HDMI out number 3, which is dedicated for zone 2 as a separate source, and that's available there. Because this HDMI exists on the right-hand side of the RX-8 1080 and higher, you can, by default, out of the box, decode HDMI audio to Zone 2. So even if you're not using the HDMI output right here, you can still plug in a set of speakers to Zone 2 and listen to an HDMI source, Apple TV, cable box, whatever it is, it's going to downmix to 2-channel for Zone 2 and send it out those Zone 2 speakers, even if it comes in HDMI. So again, that's on the 1080 and higher because it has this HDMI output, the second output for the zone. The 2080 is our first 9-channel receiver. So again, these are multi-zone systems, so you don't have to utilize all the speakers in the main room if you don't want to. So you can utilize a basic 5.1 in the main room, powered zone 2, and a powered zone 3 if you'd like to do all 9 channels that way, or any combination you'd like to. You can do a 5.1.4 or a 7.1.2 Dolby Atmos system as well. With the RX-8 1080, and again, everything's powered internally with 140 watts per channel. The RX-8 2080 does come with a better YPOW calibration. We call this a 3D calibration, where it actually has a 4-point calibration. We call it the boomerang that comes with it with the little stick on top. And there's 4 individual points that it can detect and run the YPOW on in that room. And what it does is it utilizes those 4 points to create a 3D layout of your room, not just the room size, but also speaker placement for that. So keep in mind when you're running an object-based format like Dolby Atmos or DTS:X, having a 3D mapped room inside of the AV receiver showing when and where all the speakers are placed will give the receiver a lot more data to work with, and it allows it to place the audio signals a lot more accurately. So on the 2080 and higher, if you're running in a nice theater room or a really big living room or something like that where you're running in all those speakers, this will really, really help that customer get the best Dolby Atmos or DTS:X experience. And here's that back panel that we said it looks similar to the 20 or the 1080 as well. You're going to find that dedicated HDMI out on the right-hand side. And the RXA 3080 you're going to find is a 9-channel receiver, but it is capable of processing 11 channels of audio, meaning that if you add a 2-channel amplifier, you can utilize that 2-channel amp for the front left and rights or for the rear present speakers. So if you have a big beefy amplifier, you can use the front left and rights, you use it to power those, and then use the internal amplifiers for the other 9 speakers. If you have a smaller amplifier, you can use it for the surround back speakers and then use the internal amps for everything else. This also does have a higher end ESS Saber DAC on it. It's a 32-bit DAC, whereas the 1080 and 2080 have a 24-bit Saber DAC. You're going to find the XLR terminals on the back, both an input for left and right for audio 4, and you're also going to find a pre-out for the front left and right channels as well. So if you have an XLR capable amplifier, you can run it from there. And again, there's that back picture that shows everything on the unit, including those XLR outputs for everything. I'm going to send a digital copy of these over to Rick, but this is just kind of a quick and dirty comparison chart. So all of the models are up along the top, all of the features and capabilities down on the left-hand side. You just find where everything intersects and you'll be good to go.
Robbie, if you have the ability to do that while the presentation is going, I can add it to the handouts portion of the software quickly, or we can just do it as a follow-up. Either way.
Yeah, I would say not to do it right now. I'll be able to send those off to you after the webinar.
We'll add it as the follow-up. All right,
Yeah,
thanks.
sorry about that. This one here is a electronic version of the step-up chart. So the way it reads is on the very bottom bubble, if you will. There's an RXA 680 and it retails for $549, and you have all of those features that are in that bottom bubble. For $100 more, you can go to the 780 and you gain all of those features that are in the second bubble. And you go up from there all the way up to the 3080. The other thing you can do is if you're selling from the top down, as you probably should be, you start with an RXA 3080 for $1999, and for $400 less, you can go to the 2080 and then you lose all of the features that are in the top bubble. That's the way that reads. So just to give you guys an idea of all of the new things in here and all of the kind of common things, I want to go over them really quick. We did have a new GUI menu. I showed you a picture of that, and you guys should all be pretty comfortable with it by now. But inside of the receiver menu, you're going to find a few really important things. And one of those is HDMI standby through. And what that does is when it's enabled, it's out of the box, it's disabled. But when it is enabled, you can turn off the receiver and it'll just pass through the audio and video of whatever HDMI source you were doing last. So if you wanted to get a customer who said, hey, I realize I just paid you thousands of dollars to put in this audio system, but when I want to watch the news at night, I want to turn off the receiver and just listen to it through my TV speakers. You can do that. You just enable HDMI standby through and you can turn off the receiver and it'll pass through both audio and video. You can also choose input skip and DSP skip. These are new settings inside the menu this generation. And this is important because a lot of customers just walk over to the front of a receiver and rotate the input dial. And there are a lot of inputs that are available on these Yamaha receivers. There's a lot going on inside that black box. So to let the customer kind of have a better overall experience, you can name the inputs, but then also make sure you skip the unused inputs. And keep in mind that if you're running a third-party control system, I don't know, Control 4, and it fires a command for an input, even if it's hidden, you're still going to get access to that input. So you can actually hide it from the customer if you really wanted to, and then it would be available for you guys through that discrete command. So that would still work just fine. Same thing with DSPs. So there's a program button on the remote control up and down. When you're programming the receiver, make sure you go in and skip all of the DSP modes that they're not going to be using. So if you're not going to be using Church in Freiburg or Holland Vienna or anything like that, you can go in there and actually hide it. And this is, again, one of these little details that will make the customer's life a lot easier because you can only show the DSPs that they're going to need, and it will be something that they would probably never do themselves if they bought this the system and put it on a and unboxed it and installed it themselves without having you do it. This is one of those things where it's the attention to detail uh, that will make the customer's experience a lot better by you doing this. So please do it on every job. The other thing I want to show you inside the menu is the volume scale. By default, the Yamaha receiver starts at a -80 and goes up to about a positive 16.5. Now, there's technical reasons for that, and you can describe it to the customer on why it's doing it that way, but the customer at the end of the day probably doesn't care. And all they want to do is have a volume range that starts at 0 and goes to something higher than 0. And this is where you can change that in the settings in the menu. So if your customer does complain about the negative numbers or going up, they go closer to a positive number, you can change that in the menu and it won't affect anything that you're doing on the programming side. It'll just show a different scale on the TV. And background video. This is the capability of a Yamaha receiver to play an audio source and then watch a video source of something else. So for example, they can listen to Pandora or Spotify or Tidal or Deezer or anything like that, and then at the same time listen to, or sorry, watch an HDMI input. What you're going to do is once you get the audio source playing, so say they go to Pandora, you can press the option button on the remote, which is the little 3 lines or 3 bars, a hamburger menu is what it's sometimes called. It will get to the option menu and you can choose video out. So go to the input that you want to listen to, like Pandora, press option, and then go to video out, and you'll be able to choose any of the HDMI sources and pass through. So I can watch a video of a photo shoot or something like that, a slideshow just running through an Apple TV while I'm listening to my Pandora if I wanted to do that. So those can all be done on those Yamaha receivers. Now, Yamaha does have an advanced menu that I haven't covered yet, but I want to make sure you guys are aware of this. If you turn off the receiver, all the zones, and you just walk over to the front panel and hold straight, they will always have a straight button there. Just hold straight and then press the power button. What we can do here is it'll go into an advanced menu where you can do a lot of cool things. You can reset the receiver, initialize it to factory default. You can also do a firmware update, and you can even do a backup or restore through a USB drive if you wanted to. We did talk about those other cool features that are new on the 80 series. So the dedicated HDMI Zone 2 output. We do have Surround AI, which again is new for us. It's something we worked on for a number of years before we introduced it. We want to make sure the receiver was powerful enough and it was doing everything that it should be to make it sound really, really good. And then we have the MusicCast surround and MusicCast subwoofer, and I'm going to actually show you guys those in just a minute. So I'm quickly going to run through the CXA 5200 and MXA 5200 preamp and amplifier. It's an 11-channel preamp. These are our separates. So it's a separate preamp processor, and it has no amplifiers built into it. All it does is process the audio and video and send it out. So it has pre-outs for the amplifier or any other amplifier, and it does have surround AI. It does have the best audio and video capabilities that we have inside. So it actually has 2 of those ESS Saber DACs, those 32-bit DACs that are inside the 3080. It actually has 2 of them. And of course, it has MusicCast. If you notice in the top-down picture, it does not have any amplifiers built in, so there's a lot less to it internally. But it actually has a bigger power supply, bigger heat sinks on certain things, able to make sure that there's very, very little interference coming through with the system. Big old power supply, and this is actually upgraded from the 3080. So even though it doesn't have any amplifiers built in, it actually has more power built into the system to make sure that everything has adequate power. And there's those pre-outs that are on the back there. You can go pre-out in XLR, XLR in, but it also has the pre-outs for all 11 channels, XLR, and just a standard balanced, or it has the unbalanced connection as well. There we go. There's that back panel. I'll show you guys a little bit zoomed in. And then we move on to the MXA 5200. This guy has a huge high output toroidal transformer on there. Big capacitors, very, very well designed amplifier. This is an 11-channel amplifier, and the idea behind this is just to give you the best possible audio for that dedicated home theater system. You know, you can see all the cool stuff it does. It does actually have the ability to bridge two of the channels together. So if you have a really, really heavy duty front set of speakers, you can bridge two of the channels together for not quite double the power, but pretty close. There's that back panel, shows you the XLR and the regular unbalanced RCA inputs, and the speaker terminals on the left and right hand side. Really, really well built unit. And then really quick, I just want to cover some of the general features of MusicCast. This isn't really a webinar to talk about all the details in MusicCast, but just kind of give you a really quick overview, and then make sure you realize that it does integrate into the receivers. There's no extra charge. It's there. It's available. You don't have to turn it on, but it is there for you. So it is our multi-room audio system. I can take whatever I'm listening to at one MusicCast source and link that to any of the other rooms in the house and share that content, whether it's an HDMI source, an optical, analog, and of course all of your network built-in services as well. You can control everything through an app. We have a really, really customizable app. Again, I'm not going to get into the details of it, but it is very, very well thought out, very nice, and very customizable for your consumers, including the ability to add in pictures of their actual rooms in there, either taking them from the camera on the device or taking them from a stock photo that you have laying around of their house. It's inside of all of the receivers for the past 5 years. So the past 4 generations of AV receivers, all of them have MusicCast if it has networking capabilities at all. It's also in our wireless speakers. We have a couple of those out now. We also have some older models that are no longer around, but 50 and 20 speakers do sound really nicely. It's in our sound bars. You guys, carrying the Bar 400 for quite a while. It's a great sounding sound bar for $499 with a wireless subwoofer. We also have stereo receivers. So we talked about that a little bit in a previous webinar, but we also have a turntable. Again, I'm not going to cover those. I just want to show you that MusicCast goes through everything, in a very, very well thought out, complete system. And here's our preamp and amplifiers as well. And of course, we have our brand new 4-zone system for MusicCast. So this is 4 independent zones of MusicCast built into a 1U system. Very powerful, very nice, and it works really, really well for you guys. So please make sure you're looking at those as an installer. This is only available to you in the CI channel. This is not a retail piece. This is not a piece that's be sold on the internet. So I did mention this earlier, but MusicCast Surround is a feature that is in all the 2018 AV receivers that have MusicCast. So even the RXV 485. And what it allows you to do is take these devices here and utilize them with a system wirelessly. So for example, I can utilize in a 5.1 stereo system, 5.1 surround sound system, I can do wireless MusicCast 20s behind me as surround speakers. They sit on the network and I pair them up through the MusicCast app. But these are problem-solving tools. So for example, if you can't run wires behind your customer, you can still get a 5.1 surround sound very easily. Same thing with that wireless sub on the right-hand side in that picture. You can actually use a wireless sub sitting on the network and it will sound just fine. It's in sync. You don't have to worry about delay issues or anything like that. It works really well. And the same thing with the MusicCast 50 speakers. Because it's a stereo speaker, I can actually just run one of them and it works just fine on the rear. And of course, the third-party control that was going through the system. So again, Control 4, which we work really well with, but also as well with everybody else. And there's that IP web setup again. So each of the devices has an IP address. You just type that in /setup, and you'll be able to access the web interface. So real quick, I just want to give you a recap, and then we got a few minutes that we'll do a Q&A session on here. So hopefully we got through everything in the proper amount of time. But we did talk about the brand overview, some dealer support tools. Want to make sure you guys had access to those. Make sure you're using those in your phone and update those. There were some firmware updates that we added a lot of features into. So all those receivers that you've been installing for the past year or more, they now have more features than when you first put them in. So make sure your customers know that and make sure they're accessing it through those firmware updates. We talked about the higher end Aventage, so the RXA 1080 with Surround AI, RXA 2080, 3080, and then of course the CXA 5200 as well. We just did a brief recap of what MusicCast is and how it's enabled and how you can utilize things like MusicCast uh, surround to save you time on the installation. So hope we covered everything. I'm going to kind of open it up, Rick, to your questions. So if there's stuff that's come in through the presentation, we'll kind of cover those.
Sure, we've got a couple, and it looks like we've got like 5-10 minutes left. So, quick question. Most of the questions that came in were about the this slide that had that ID number that we're going to share. So,
Hmm.
just to address everyone who asked a question, I'll share that in the follow-up email. So just look for that in the follow-up email. And as Robbie said, it's one number, so we don't have to worry about parsing out different
Yeah,
numbers for value tone accounts versus MRI accounts
correct. And
versus all that
you
else.
guys can give that out to your installers, anybody that works in us, with us. So that's perfectly fine.
Okay, perfect. And then, okay, so one of the questions that came up, so you mentioned Yamaha's engineering multiple times.
Hmm.
Um, so it's not really a secret that Yamaha likes to tackle things on their own when it comes to things that are, yeah, I don't want to say standardized, but when it comes to things that are where a lot of other companies who may use ODM type manufacturing, and
Hmm.
for those who don't know, that means like contract manufacturing, and then they sell products and it ends up with different names on it in different parts of the industry. So anyway, so something like Odyssey versus YPOW or
Hmm.
Dirac versus YPOW. Do you have any? But obviously, I'm assuming that part of it is the licensing. Since you have engineering talent, you'd rather develop your own than pay someone
Hmm.
to do it, and you can do it a little better. But you also mentioned the pro sound side and having a little bit of experience on this side of the world. You guys have some pretty serious hardware on that side of the world, so I can't imagine that it makes sense for you to copy something that's in a $500 receiver from a competing brand when you have something that goes in Carnegie
Yeah,
Hall.
correct, exactly. So I mean, it allows us
But
to,
do you want to
customize
do you
stuff.
want to address kind of like the YPOW versus ARC versus Odyssey type thing?
Sure, yeah, I can kind of cover it briefly. So YPOW obviously was developed in-house. I've been at Yamaha a little over 16 years, and it was actually a feature that we were just introducing when I first got here. So it's probably been 15 years or so, maybe 15 and a half years that we've had YPOW in our products. And every year it seems to get a little bit better and a little bit more features to it. And then as you step up the line, you gain more features as well. And Rick, it's like what you said, when you have all the engineering and processing and attention to detail that we have, you don't need to buy an off-the-shelf system to do everything that you can. The other part of it is actually that we can customize the chips that are on the market right now, kind of off-the-shelf chips, to do more things than what is kind of capable and what's opened up to in the original firmware. We can actually write custom firmware for the processing chips and do a lot more things with them than even what they were originally spec'd for. So it's kind of a cool capability when it comes to that. But to give you an example, yes, there are some off-the-shelf Dirac, Odyssey, things like that. A lot of receiver manufacturers recently have actually moved away from buying an off-the-shelf system. Like Odyssey. We actually lost quite a few of them to that, and they developed their own. But we've had a lot more years to kind of refine and fine-tune it. So it makes sense for us to kind of keep going with that. There are some differences. You're always going to get somebody who says one sounds better than another, but I can tell you from everything that I've seen on the engineering side, we take in the feedback that we get from the field. This isn't doing this right, or we wish it would do this feature as well, and we add those to it. So, for example, one of the things we got knocked on, was that it wouldn't be able to adjust the frequencies of the subwoofer down below 20 hertz. So even though you can't hear anything below 20 hertz for the average person, they wanted to be able to run the EQ down below that to make adjustments. So we actually added those in a couple years back. So I think that the 2018 models obviously all have it, but I think even the 2017, you can actually go back in and EQ, I think down to 16 hertz. forward the subwoofer channel. So it's just one of those cool features where because we can and because we have the ability to do that, we just take advice from the field and we make adjustments as necessary. So we think it actually works really well. And all the systems that I do always sound really good with the wipeout done. Again, it gives it not just the number of channels, but it actually runs down to locations, and the 3D calibration, stuff like that, about positioning where each of those speakers are in a 3D space.
Nice. Okay. Well, thanks. That's pretty detailed. So yeah, I didn't know that you added first active EQ. That's actually I like that because I like to set subsonic filters.
Hmm.
So, the lowest frequency range that your sub can play in its environment, like in the room with the transfer function of the room,
Hmm.
and set a subsonic. So set a high pass at that point so that you're not trying to, using amplifier resources because low
Yep,
frequencies
to
equal
play
high
something
current,
like that.
and you're
Yeah.
not toasting that amplifier to do some 9 hertz thing that's like the I think the one that everyone else brings up for ultra low frequency is on Finding Nemo when the girl's knocking on the aquarium.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean if you've got a modest size, master bedroom system or something like that with a 10-inch subwoofer, you can roll that off at, you know, 28 or 32 or
Yeah.
17 or whatever instead of trying to get it to do that 8 hertz or whatever that's supposed to be.
Yep.
Cool. So
Yeah,
that's
that's a
good.
good example.
All right, let's see. So, all right, you mentioned the Avantage differences between the RXA and the RXV. I think that was on a slide. Can you pop that back to that slide
Give
again?
me a second here. Let me see if I can find what you're referring to.
Okay.
Let's see.
I kind of have them memorized
It
because
wasn't the step chart, right? It was before that, probably when we were
I
doing.
think, yeah, we talked. It's aluminum faceplate, symmetrical,
Yeah.
detachable power cord,
Yeah.
and there's something else. Mort Golden has drilled this into me. If any of
Yeah.
you know who Mort is, he's been the Yamaha rep since, I don't know, the Kennedy administration.
Yeah,
So
kind of.
there it
Okay,
is.
so is this the one you're looking at? So yeah,
Yeah.
so
Oh,
there's definitely a lot of stuff going on. The aluminum front panel actually not only looks better, but it actually has audio interference, prohibiting qualities inside. So if there's actually RF interference coming from the front area, between the faceplate and the receiver, the aluminum front panel can stop that. It makes it sound better. So there's a lot of cool things that are done inside of there. In addition to that web setup that we talked about, those are on Avantage and things like
okay.
that.
Well, one of the things that Mort always said was detachable power cord. Is that still exclusive to RXA or is that migrated
It
down to
it
V?
no, definitely not on the RXVs. However, the RXA 680, the entry level Avantage, still does have a
Okay.
fixed power cord. We keep bugging them to
Okay.
try to fix that. I believe there's going to be some changes in the next generation, but I always like to make sure that we point that out that there is one model at the very bottom on the Avantage that does
Okay.
have a fixed power cord. I'm not happy about it, but it's there, and I'd rather tell you. But all the other ones do have removable power cords. So yeah.
And I'll tell you, you've been in our branches before
Hmm.
doing, so we have an entire aisle of power cords. So we know that when these guys build these racks out, they like to use
Yeah.
custom length. They don't want to zip tie up a 32-foot long extension cord.
Yep. Yeah. No need.
Perfect.
So.
Okay. Another question that popped up. Um, are there other firmware updates for AirPlay 2 and other streaming services also coming to the WXC platform? I know that wasn't part of what we were supposed to be covering. I thought I would ask while I have you.
Yep, understood. And the answer to that is there's hardware limitations inside the WXA and WXC50 products that prevent it from doing AirPlay 2. It came out before those specs were available. So unfortunately, at this time, we don't support AirPlay 2 on those models, and we're not adding any of the new features into it. So like Qobuz, Amazon Music, those are not going to be coming to the WXA and WXC platform just because of those limitations in the hardware. At the moment, I would love to tell you, wait 2 months and then just buy the new model coming out. I don't have anything on that, kind of close radar where I can say just hold off and do that. So at the moment, the WXA, WXC50 are still current. They're going to remain current for the foreseeable future. So just continue putting those in. If you need to get AirPlay
Hold
2,
on. You said
sure.
foreseeable future. You just a moment ago said 2 months. Are you tipping something that we're not supposed to be
No,
talking
and
about?
that's the thing. I can't, I can't say anything.
Okay,
So because
sure,
I
sure.
don't see anything now,
All right.
and that's the problem. I honestly don't see anything on the horizon, and I can say 2 months or three
Okay.
months or whatever it is, but
Okay.
the answer is no. There's nothing replacing it. In that.
Okay.
If you do have the ability to put in a multi-room system, go for the XTA Quad Streamer, the XTA QS 5400. That one has four
Okay.
zones of AirPlay 2 built into it. So similar to a
Okay.
WXA50, just for more rooms.
So Robbie, just so you know, anytime I can scoop Julie Jacobson on industry news, I love to do it. So that's why I always ask.
Yeah, no,
So
in this case,
she's
I'd love to tell you, hold off a couple months, but I really can't, and that's just being as honest as I can with you guys.
yeah.
The WXA and C50 are here for a little
Okay. Perfect. Okay. So I'm not Michael, but I'm going to ask a Michael follow-up question.
bit.
So if I AirPlay 2 into an Aventage receiver that's also married into the Musicast ecosystem, can I share that source once it's on the Musicast ecosystem? If I
Uh,
start it, here's why I
the
asked that, because in Sonos, you can.
mhm,
Sonos has some of the older models don't have AirPlay 2, the newer models obviously do.
mhm.
And one of the workarounds is you add it to a new product and then you group the zones and then mute the first item.
I gotcha.
It's a, it's a pain in the butt, but it works.
Yeah,
Can
yeah.
we do something similar to that in
As
Musicast that
far as
might be
I
one of the
know, the answer is no. I mean, AirPlay 2, it may have
okay,
changed, but I kind of doubt it because Apple, at least initially, as far as I knew, had restrictions on that where we cannot
okay.
rebroadcast an AirPlay signal.
Oh,
They actually prevent
okay.
us from doing that. So that's the one thing that you cannot link other rooms to, is AirPlay.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but you
Well,
could do it via Bluetooth or something like that. But yeah, you unfortunately you cannot
okay.
do it with AirPlay.
Okay. Well, just thought I'd see if there was some sort of a workaround. Those
Yeah, I
workarounds are
wish I
pretty
could tell you.
clunky anyway, and they're usually they're more for honestly they're more for us, like the installers and the
Mhm.
techies,
Yep.
because we're comfortable with the 5-step setup, but we would probably not do it for a installation anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let me see. Um, oh, do you have a moment to review the voice control? So you said that the Alexa voice control that we've had for quite some time is
hmm
now nearly replicated by the Google. And I think on our last one, you said that now we're native, right? So we don't have to have the hey Alexa, tell this to tell that to tell this kind of thing. We can basically
Correct.
just tell
So,
it what to
but
do.
Google still has the same limitations. They're basically what Alexa was, a couple months ago. We
Okay.
basically they caught up to what Alexa did, and then Alexa now has additional features, which is the ability to do that deep linking of, hey, play jazz in the living room, or play, whatever in the kitchen. So that is a new feature that is on Alexa that is not covered with Google just yet. Obviously, we're still developing and we're still updating all of those things, but at the moment, it doesn't do that. So Alexa has a better
Okay.
implementation right now.
And just I know future stuff is sometimes difficult to comment on, but Siri or any of the Apple type
hmm
voice control, is that something that is in the
So
works?
yeah, we do have Siri basic control right now. So if you added in the MusicCast device into the Home app, it'll be fine just as long as it's a
Okay.
2018 model, and it does do some basic control. We actually have Apple executives that run a lot of these AirPlay 2 devices, like the XDA quad streamer, in their house because they're AirPlay 2 and they work with Siri and all that.
Nice. Okay. I hope yours works better than mine because every time I ask Siri, instead of giving me an answer, it says, if you turn on location settings, I can help you.
Uh,
I'm like, I'm not trying to find a restaurant. I
yeah,
really
yeah,
want you to just turn this on or turn this off. I think it always thinks that I'm looking for directions.
yeah, that makes sense. But yeah,
Siri,
they're trying
Siri
to get as
knows I'm
much
lost.
information as they can. But
Yeah,
they're always getting better. That's really the easiest way I could tell you because we're
yeah,
constantly improving things. I know they're working on additional stuff for the Google platform, and I know that we are looking at some stuff for Apple as well. So, Siri's always getting better by itself as a platform, and we're always getting better with that
yeah.
platform.
And I will say, I mean, I know we're not affiliated with them in any way, and we just our parent company invested a significant amount of money in a control platform recently. But the fact that you're now aligned with Josh AI, it I I like what they're doing, and I hope that more of the vendors in our space do some of the things that they're doing because they are absolutely the Google, the Alexa, and the Siri or whatever. It's still a big giant game, as Simon says. And
Hmm.
if you miss the one word, it doesn't do anything.
Yep.
So I kind of like where voice control is going. I think voice control is is it's headed in a place where it's going to be like so
Yeah,
common. It's going to be
right
more
now, the last
commonplace.
couple years, we're basically in its infancy. It's not going to
Yeah,
look anything like this in 10 years. What we're
yeah,
doing right now. We're figuring out, the whole industry is figuring out what users want, and what manufacturers can provide, and then, creating stuff around that. And we're getting more powerful, we're getting quicker, we're getting less dependent on the cloud. There's a lot of things that we're doing for voice control. But yeah, once you look at what we did, last year and down to what we do this year in 2, 3, 4 years, is going to be some huge improvements.
well, I'm old enough that I remember walking to the TV to change the channel before
Yeah,
remotes were commonplace, and I remember talking to like my grandparents and things like that, and they were telling me that once upon a time you had to go down to the basement to change the setting on the furnace. So control always evolves and it
yep,
always gets better. And I think voice absolutely. I mean, I'm not Nostradamus here by saying this, but voice is absolutely the new frontier. So I'm glad that you guys are taking it very
yeah. We're
seriously.
definitely active in it. We got a lot of engineering resources that are working just on voice control with that. So I have a feeling there'll be some really cool stuff that we do in the future.
Cool. So, all right, I think we're done with the questions. I got one question for you.
Sure.
What's going on at Carnegie? I hadn't heard
Uh,
that you guys were Carnegie. Is it a Nexo install or is it?
Yeah, so it's mostly Nexo stuff that we have in there, which is Nexo's owned by Yamaha. So we
Yeah.
purchased them a couple years back, and we've got all of our digital boards and processing and stuff like that. And then, of course, Nexo speakers are powering everything inside. It was actually a really interesting, audition period for that. We had 3 chances, I've been told. Anyway, I don't work for those
Mhm.
guys, but I was told we have 3 chances to come in, set up everything as you normally would permanently install it, do a
Yeah.
temporary install, and then they get to audition it, and then you tear everything down. They bring in the next guy, he does the same thing, and you actually went through 3 rounds of that, and
Wow.
then they ended up choosing Yamaha and the Nexo products as the winner for that. So it was a lot of effort, but it was worth it, to get such a prestigious venue.
I was gonna say, I guess when you're Carnegie,
You
you
can
can
do that.
be
Yeah,
demanding like that.
yeah,
Wow, that's pretty fantastic. And I'll be honest with you, every Nexo install I've ever heard, I go to a lot of live music.
yeah,
Every Nexo install I've ever heard, I've never heard a Nexo install sound that didn't sound at least very good.
yeah,
Most of
yeah.
them sound amazing.
Yeah, and it
So they're
depends on the engineers and stuff like that as well. Everyone's got their personal
in the
flair,
room,
but
yeah,
yeah.
in the rooms because but Nexo stuff, it always seems like it. When I'm in a place and I note that the room sounds good, I always try to look and see what's going on. And when you see they have those kind of very distinctive wave
Yeah,
guides,
yep. The arrays of
so you can
speakers and stuff set up. Yeah,
you can spot them from a mile away. So
yeah. Well, that's cool.
cool,
Thanks for that. I appreciate it.
cool. All right, well, Robbie, thank you very much for your time. As always, we had a fantastic webinar. Couple notes on the chat box saying thank you, great as usual. Thanks, Rick. Thanks, Robbie. Perfect. Let me see. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we wanted to cover. Oh, the one sheet pages.
Hmm.
Um, are all of the I shouldn't say stuff like this, but I do anyway. When I kind of like mock Google and Alexa for
Yeah.
being Simon Says, the one sheets, do they have kind of the the setup menus and the phrases and stuff like that? Is there something like that that the customers can leave with
We
homeowners
try
when they
not to
do
get
that?
too in depth in the one sheets. It's more just a quick hit, these are the
Okay.
functionalities. But actually on our consumer site, we do there's a page where we talk about Alexa and we actually give a list of the commands. Right
Oh,
now,
nice.
because we updated the commands to do so much more, it's not we can't give you an exact list of the only things we support like we did before because we do so
Okay.
many more generic things. So we can't list every album that you can call out, and we can't list everything
Oh,
that we do because there's so many things now. But there's the basic controls that are still there. Volume, source, power, things like that. You can of course do all of that. And those are all listed on the website. But there's also
okay.
a lot more because now you can recall things like a playlist or a genre or an album, and you just can't get that in depth inside of the descriptions, normally. But yeah.
Okay. Do you use it at home personally?
I do. I use both Alexa and Google at home. I'm not
Okay.
an Apple guy. I'm an Android guy, but I use
Okay.
Siri and stuff when we need to in the lab. But otherwise, I use Alexa at home, and I was beta testing it when it was still in testing phase, and it's been
Okay.
working really well. I can tell you.
I I bought a Dot when they first came out when they were still
Mhm.
$50,
Yeah.
and I disliked it so much that I traded it to one of our other staff members for lunch.
Wow.
So, and I've not, and I mean, again, this is what, 2 years ago, so I haven't.
Yeah, I
I would
get
call
one
him
because
back
I
in.
have to be, in the
Yeah,
testing. I
yeah.
do leave them on mute sometimes, just, mute the microphone or walk away from it and do it. But I've got a 4-year-old and, we set timers for everything for her, playing with stuff, eating dinner, whatever it is. And, it's just so convenient to, yell at it and tell it to set a timer and remind us and stuff like that. So in addition to everything else I do with the audio system, with the Yamaha stuff, I like to do the timers and things like that. But
Well,
yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with it.
all mine ever told me is I don't understand what whatever that
Yeah,
phrase is that it always yells back at you when it does when you don't do the Simon
yeah,
Says
they've
thing.
definitely got a lot better. So that's for
Yeah.
sure.
So when you're calling out music, um, I've known that it's had the ability to do like kind of the generic stuff, like start, um, play jazz in the living room or whatever you
Yeah.
name your zones. But you said now you can do things like specific albums and
Yeah, so
things like
now
that.
we support that deep linking, which is again, you can pull something like, play the White Album from the Beatles in the kitchen,
Okay.
and it'll do that. And there's a lot of cool things you can do. Now, basically, I like to describe it as it now kind of works how you think it should. So
Okay.
you can pull up a lot of things that are just native speech, with that, and you can do all the basics too. You can skip a song. I use that a lot, when I'm running it. I may start it on my phone and play a playlist, but then when it starts playing, if I don't like that song, I'll skip it or, I'll jump to something else. And it's a lot easier with the voice control rather than pulling out the phone or walking over to the remote or something like that. The other thing I like to do is that you can link rooms with it as well. So I can say link the living room and the kitchen, and it'll do that. Or I can unlink stuff at the end of the day. Or one thing I like to do is I like to put everything in a group called everything, and I actually can say, "Hey Alexa, turn off everything," and it'll turn off all my lights. It'll turn off all my music cast. So if I'm walking out the door and anything is on, doesn't matter what it is, I can just say turn off everything, and it clicks, and everything is off. So that's the way I like to do it as well, and
Hmm.
it's just little things like that that make my life a little bit easier. That I appreciate.
Well, I'm a Luddite. I got my very first communicating thermostat like 4 months ago.
Yeah,
Um, I, I'm that guy who's been doing this forever. I've never had like big, giant, you know, control
yeah,
stuff at home. I'm a simple. I know how to. I can manage 4 remotes, so I use 4 remotes. Now I don't.
yeah, yeah.
So a vendor was nice enough to send me a beta of something new that they were working on that's actually pretty cool. So I
No, that's good.
begrudgingly now have a pretty awesome touchscreen, and I now begrudgingly have app control. I can change the thermostat. I can do the lighting, and I mean, it's nice to be industry standard 2002 here in 2019.
Yeah, that's all right. Everybody makes their baby steps in the right direction, so that's good.
and, and the cobbler's shoes, or the cobbler's kids always have the worst shoes, right? Isn't that the old?
Yeah, that's what they
Yeah,
say.
yeah. Okay, sir. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and lock this up. We don't have any more questions on the thing. Let me full screen this and make sure that I'm not missing anything. Um, yeah, we didn't get any more questions while we were
Okay.
babbling. Okay. Well, to everyone, thank you again for joining us. And oh, I don't want to say this definitively, but I don't know that we have any more presentations this year. This might be the last one for the year.
Oh, there you go. Hopefully end on a good note. All right, but
I
that's
don't
good.
know. I think I've got one other vendor I was going to try to slide in, but anyway. So I want to thank everyone. In case it does turn out to be our last webinar of the year, I want to thank everyone for supporting this endeavor for us. Now it's part of MRI and Value Tone and Custom Plus as well. But as AllNet, we've been doing this now for 4 years, and we've gotten some nice recognition in the CE Pro Quest for Quality and the Residential Systems Awards. So thank you very much for supporting this. I know it's time out of your day, and we unfortunately have to do it in the middle of the week because it's when we're open, and it's time that you could ordinarily be spending making money doing your own installs. So we thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to join us for these training presentations. We feel it's important for us, and the vendors obviously find value for it, because when I ask, it's we're never at a shortage for people willing to take the spots that we leave that we have open. So
Yep,
got
absolutely.
our presenters like Robbie love to get on and take the opportunity to engage with our dealer base. So thanks, Robbie, and thanks everyone for joining us. And if we don't do this again, everyone, happy holidays.
Yep, same guys. Happy holidays.
Okay, thanks.